You will not believe what happened inside that hearing room. One small sentence. One quiet whisper. One open microphone. And suddenly the whole country stopped to listen. This moment did not feel like politics. It felt personal. It felt raw. And it changed everything that came after. Inside the Kansas state capitol, the air felt heavy. It was dry, tired air. The kind that made people shift in their seats and rub their eyes. The room had been busy for hours. Pens clicked. Papers shuffled. Soft voices filled the space. It was clear to everyone that the hearing had dragged on too long. The Congressional Subcommittee on Education Policy was deep into its third hour. People were nervous. People were tired. And emotions were getting sharp. Representative Jasmine Crockett sat at the long table, calm and focused. She wore a blue blazer and kept her notes neatly stacked in front of her. She had barely spoken in the last segment, but not because she had nothing to say. She was simply waiting. Jasmine always chose the perfect moment to speak. Across from her sat Karoline Leavitt, a senior aide in federal education reform. Karoline was known for her strong tone, her firm views, and her way of speaking without hesitation. But today she looked tense. Her shoulders stayed stiff. Her jaw clenched too often. She looked like someone ready to snap at any moment. Something about being challenged, especially by a confident black congresswoman, seemed to make her uneasy. When Jasmine finally spoke, her voice was soft, steady, and clear. "So, what you're saying," she said, looking directly at Karoline, "is that schools in underserved communities just aren't trying hard enough." Karoline crossed her arms tightly, leaned back in her seat, and replied, "I'm saying standards should be enforced equally. No exceptions." Jasmine nodded once. "The problem," she said calmly, "is that the board has never been level. You cannot talk about fairness without talking about access. Context matters. History matters. Reality matters." Then it happened. Karoline let out a small scoff. It was quiet. It was meant to be private. She leaned slightly to the side and muttered something under her breath. She did not speak into the microphone. She thought no one would hear it. She thought she was safe. But the microphone was still on. And it picked up every word. She should just go back to Africa. The sound carried across the speakers so clearly that several people froze instantly. A young intern near the media table stiffened. A staffer dropped a pen. Someone coughed. Someone whispered, "Did she just?" But no one finished the sentence. The live C-SPAN feed captured it. Cameras were rolling. Phones were recording. And millions of ears heard it. Jasmine did not move. She did not flinch. She did not look shocked. She simply folded her hands together. She blinked once. She looked at Karoline with a calm, almost painful softness, like someone seeing the truth behind a person. The subcommittee chair, an older representative from Idaho, cleared his throat. "Let's stay on topic, please," he said awkwardly. Karoline reached for her water bottle and took a slow drink, pretending nothing had happened. But her ears were red. Her hands shook slightly. She knew. She knew right away what she had done. She knew the microphone had caught everything. Jasmine looked at her for one quiet, steady moment. Not with anger. Not with fear. Not with pain. But with clarity. A look that said, "You didn't hurt me. You exposed yourself." But Jasmine still said nothing. She turned back to her notepad and wrote one short line. Then she let the hearing continue. Those few seconds of silence were louder than a scream. They were sharper than an argument. They were heavier than any speech. And they did not stay quiet for long. The viral moment. By the time the hearing ended, the clip had already gone viral. Someone in the press row had captured it from the perfect angle, Karoline's face, the mic, the exact second the words slipped out. The video raced across the internet. It trended on every platform. Go back to Africa. Became a national discussion in minutes. Memes filled the timeline. News anchors rearranged their schedules. Podcasts rushed to record emergency episodes. Politicians scrambled to respond. Hashtags multiplied. The video was replayed over and over. Paused. Zoomed in. Analyzed. Karoline's team panicked. Her aide, a young man named Brian, walked beside her in the hallway after the hearing. Cameras followed them like a rushing wave. "We'll say it was a misunderstanding," Brian whispered. "We'll say the audio was unclear." "No one knows for sure what I said," Karoline muttered back. But they did know. The words were too clear. Too sharp. Too cold. Inside a private hallway, her phone buzzed nonstop. Messages flooded in. Some angry. Some shocked. Some disgusted. Very few supportive. Her reputation was crumbling in real time. Her communications team released a quick statement. Miss Leavitt was misheard due to background noise. She firmly condemns all forms of racism. No one believed it. People were tired of excuses. Tired of denial. Tired of the same cycle. Say something offensive. Claim it was misheard. Release a polished statement. Move on. Not this time. Jasmine's silence. Reporters surrounded Jasmine as she walked toward the elevator. "Congresswoman, do you want to respond? Do you have any comment on what Miss Leavitt said? Will you push for disciplinary action?" Jasmine stopped, looked at them, and simply said, "Not yet." That small phrase shook the whole situation. Supporters praised her strength. Critics accused her of waiting to strike back. But Jasmine did not rush. She went to her hotel room. She sat with her mother, who had flown in from Texarkana to visit her. They ate dinner quietly. Finally, her mother said softly, "You're going to say something." "Yes," Jasmine replied. "But not what they expect." Her mother nodded slowly. "Say what's true. The truth is stronger than anger." Jasmine looked out the window at the Capitol dome glowing under the night sky. She breathed deeply. She knew the next day would matter. It would matter not just for her, but for anyone who had been told to go back in a country they called home. Meanwhile, Karoline sat alone in her own hotel room, watching the viral clip again and again, each replay cutting deeper. She felt something she had not felt in a long time: fear. Real fear. Fear that she had crossed a line she could not fix. Her aide finally said, "You're not going to talk your way out of this one." Karoline whispered, "I didn't mean it like that." "That," he replied, "is the problem." The country reacts. Across America, the clip spread everywhere. A diner in Ohio played it on the TV above the counter. A waitress shook her head and said, "It's always the microphone that tells the truth." In Fresno, California, a retired veteran named Bill told his neighbor, "She handled that like steel." In a high school in Arizona, a teacher played the clip for her class and asked, "How do we talk about belonging? How do we talk about dignity?" People were not just angry. They were reflective. And Jasmine, quiet, calm Jasmine, became the center of the conversation without saying a word. The press conference is coming. By morning, reporters were packed shoulder to shoulder around the Capitol press room. Something was about to happen. They could feel it. Something important. Something real. At exactly 10 a.m., Jasmine Crockett walked in alone. No cameras behind her. No staff. No flashing lights. Just her. Calm. Steady. Confident. She stepped up to the podium. And the room fell completely silent. She opened a black folder. Looked at the page once. Closed it, and then said, "I was going to read a prepared statement. But I don't think I need it." The room leaned forward. America leaned forward. Her voice was soft, but it carried weight. What happened yesterday was not new to me. The cameras clicked. Reporters froze. I've been told to go back since I was a teenager standing in a grocery line. I've heard it in airports, on the sidewalk, in boardrooms, in whispers, and sometimes in smiles. A few people shifted in their seats. So no. I wasn't shocked. But I was disappointed that people still believe those words are harmless. She looked directly into the camera. When you tell someone to go back, you're not questioning their citizenship. You're questioning their right to belong. Their worth. Their place. Their humanity. She paused. And I want to be very clear today. I'm not going anywhere. That line hit the country like a heartbeat. What happened next shocked everyone in that room. People thought Jasmine had already said the most powerful thing she could say. They thought her calm words were enough. But they had no idea what was coming next. No one expected her to reveal the things she revealed. No one expected the room to react the way it did. And no one expected how this moment would shape the future for both women. What Jasmine said next. What she revealed just moments later. And how the entire room reacted. Took this story in a direction no one was ready for. The press room stayed silent after Jasmine said, "I'm not going anywhere." People were leaning forward now. Some held their breath. Even the microphones hummed softly, as if the entire building was waiting for her next words. Jasmine slowly placed her hands on the podium. "I want to talk about something else," she said. Her voice stayed calm, but it carried a new weight. A deeper weight. A weight that came from years of living through moments like this. "You all heard what was said yesterday," she continued. "I know you heard it. The country heard it. But this moment is not only about a sentence. It is about every time we choose dignity instead of anger. Every time we choose truth instead of noise." A few reporters glanced at one another. They could feel the shift. This was no longer a response. This was a turning point. Jasmine took a quiet breath. "There is something I wrote down yesterday," she said. She opened her folder and lifted a single sheet of paper. But the room watched closely as she placed the sheet down again, untouched. "And I'm still not reading it," she said. A few people smiled softly. They knew she was speaking from her heart. "What I want to talk about today," she continued, "is why we cannot keep pretending that words like go back are simply slips. They come from somewhere. And that somewhere is a place we must finally face." Her tone stayed steady, but her eyes carried something deeper. Something heavier. Something earned. "When I was 20, Jasmine said, I worked 2 jobs to get through school. One morning, I walked into a small office to interview for a student position. The woman at the desk looked at my resume, then looked at me, and said, 'We don't hire your type.' The room froze. I didn't yell. I didn't argue. I walked out. But I never forgot it. Not because of the words themselves, but because of the message behind them." She paused. The message was, "You don't belong here." Someone in the audience nodded slowly. Another wiped their glasses. The truth of her words sat heavy in the air. "And for years after that," Jasmine said, "I carried this quiet question inside me. Do I really belong at these tables? Do I really belong in these rooms? Do I really belong in this country in the way others do?" Her voice softened. But every time I asked myself that question, someone would say something that answered it for me, not with kindness. Not with acceptance. But with a reminder, "Go back." She shook her head gently. "I don't go back. I move forward." The cameras clicked. The room seemed to draw a collective breath. "That is why this moment matters," she continued. "Because belonging is not a gift someone hands you. Belonging is something you claim. Not with violence. Not with fear. Not with shame." She lifted her chin slightly. "You claim it with truth." The room reacts. Her words settled into the quiet space like soft thunder. Reporters typed quickly. Camera operators zoomed in. People at home paused their TVs. Some whispered to their spouses. Some shook their heads. Some held their coffee cups a little tighter. But the moment was not over. Jasmine looked back at the crowd. "I am not here today to punish Karoline," she said. Gasps ran across the room. No one expected that line. "I am not here to destroy her career. I am not here to humiliate her. That is not justice. That is revenge. And I do not need revenge." She placed one hand lightly on the podium. "What I want," she said, "is understanding. Real understanding. The kind that forces all of us to look at ourselves, not just at each other." A reporter raised his hand. But Jasmine held up one finger gently. "No questions yet," she said. The room fell still again. Karoline watches. Over in a quiet office on the other side of the building, Karoline was watching the press conference on a small TV with her aide, Brian. She sat hunched forward, elbows on her knees. Her face was pale. Her hands kept rubbing together. She looked like someone waiting for a sentence to be announced. Brian watched her closely. "You should listen," he said softly. Karoline did not respond. Her eyes stayed fixed on the screen. Every word Jasmine spoke hit her a little harder. She whispered, "She doesn't sound angry." "No," Brian said. "She sounds real." Karoline swallowed hard. She had expected yelling. She had expected threats. She had expected political attacks. But Jasmine was doing something much harder. She was speaking truth without cruelty. And somehow, that was more painful. Back to the press room. Jasmine looked at the reporters again. "What I want," she repeated, "is a real conversation. A conversation about why we still use words like that. Why we still say them. Why we still think them. Why they come so easily when we feel threatened." A reporter near the front took a deep breath. Jasmine continued. "I want people watching this to ask themselves one question. Why did that sentence feel familiar? Because for millions of Americans, it was." She pressed her hand flat on the podium. "This is not about one insult. This is not about one woman. This is about a country still learning how to live with all of its people, not just some of them." Someone in the back whispered, "Wow." A surprising reveal. Then Jasmine said something no one expected. "Yesterday, before the hearing, Karoline and I had a brief conversation." Every head in the room snapped up. "It was off camera," she said. "It was quiet. No one paid attention to it except me." The reporters leaned forward. "She told me she hoped we could disagree without making things personal." Gasps filled the room again. "She said she respected the work I did, even when she disagreed with my positions. And I believed her." A long, heavy pause. "And I think she meant it." People stared. Papers dropped. One reporter whispered to another, "Did she just defend her?" Jasmine nodded slightly. "We had a moment. A real moment. She spoke to me like a colleague. Like a human being. And that is why yesterday's comment hurt people. Not because of the sentence itself, but because of how quickly respect can disappear." Her voice softened. "If it can disappear that fast. Was it ever there?" The room stayed absolutely still. Another shift. Jasmine continued. "I want to say something directly to Karoline. She may be watching." She looked straight into the nearest camera. "You are more than one sentence." The room erupted in murmurs. "You are more than one mistake." "I know you are." Reporters stared at one another, confused, shocked, moved. "But I also need you to understand," Jasmine continued, "that the people who look like me, we are more than one sentence, too." The camera zoomed in. "We are more than stereotypes. We are more than assumptions. We are more than the places you think we should go back to. Her voice thickened, not with tears but with truth. We belong here. We always have. Back to Karoline. Watching the TV, Karoline felt something sharp break inside her chest. Not pain. Something like realization. She whispered, "Why is she being kind?" Her voice cracked. Brian looked at her gently. "She isn't being kind," he said. "She's being honest." Karoline covered her face with both hands. "I don't deserve that," she said softly. Brian sighed. "You don't get to decide what you deserve. You get to decide what you do next." Jasmine's final words of the day. Back in the press room, Jasmine knew she had to end the conference. But she wanted one final message to land. She looked around the room at every face watching her. "I don't expect everyone to agree with me," she said. "I don't expect everyone to like me." She shook her head lightly. "That is not the point. The point is this: when someone tries to push you out, you stay. You stay calm. You stay grounded. You stay human." She tapped her folder once. "And you stay here. Because you belong here." She stepped back from the microphone. "No questions today." Then she turned and walked out. No smile. No dramatic exit. No cameras chasing her. Just a quiet walk down a long hallway. A walk full of truth. What happened after the press conference? For hours, the country reacted. Some praised her strength. Some called her too soft. Some called her too political. Others called her too calm. And some said she wasn't calm at all, she was powerful. But everyone agreed on one thing. The way she handled the moment was different. Very different. People posted the clip and wrote things like, "She didn't fight back. She stood tall. This is real leadership. She didn't shout. She didn't insult. She told the truth." I needed to hear this today. At a coffee shop in Chicago, two older women watched the clip on a phone. One said, "That's how my grandmother talked. Calm, but she didn't play around." In a barber shop in Dallas, men watched quietly while getting trims. One said, "That speech. That hit me." Across the country, conversations started. People talked about race. People talked about respect. People talked about belonging. People talked about mistakes. People talked about redemption. Some talked angrily. Some talked kindly. Some talked honestly for the first time in years. This was no longer a political moment. It was a human moment. Karoline makes a decision. Late that night, Karoline sat alone in her hotel room. The lights were dim. Her makeup was gone. Her hair was tied back loosely. Her eyes were red. She replayed Jasmine's press conference again. Every word. Every pause. Every truth. When the clip ended, she whispered, "I have to face her." Brian looked up from across the room. "You sure?" Karoline nodded slowly. "Yes. I need to talk to her. I need to look her in the eye. No cameras. No press. Just her." Brian took a deep breath. This could go badly. Karoline looked down at her hands. "It already has," she said. "Now I need to make it right." She stood up. Her hands trembled. But she was ready to face the truth she had tried to avoid. You will not believe what happened when Karoline finally stood in front of Jasmine. Everyone expected shouting. Everyone expected anger. Everyone expected a fight. But what these two women said to each other behind a closed door, what they admitted, what they revealed, changed the story in a way no one saw coming. This moment was not loud. It was not dramatic. It was human. And sometimes, the quietest moments change us the most. Karoline stood outside Jasmine Crockett's office, her hands shaking slightly. The hallway was empty, except for a faint sound of footsteps somewhere far down the corridor. The fluorescent lights hummed above her. Her heart felt heavy, almost too heavy for her chest. Brian stood beside her. "You sure you want to do this?" he asked. Karoline nodded slowly. Her throat felt tight. "This isn't about politics anymore," she whispered. "This is about being a person." Brian gently knocked on the office door. A staffer opened it. She looked surprised to see Karoline but didn't say anything. She turned and walked inside. "Congresswoman?" the staffer said quietly. "Someone is here to see you." Jasmine was sitting at her desk, closing a folder, preparing for a long afternoon. She looked up when she heard the staffer's tone. When Karoline stepped into the doorway, Jasmine's eyebrows lifted slightly. Not with anger. Not with shock. But with a calm acceptance. She nodded once. "Come in," she said softly. "The private meeting no one saw." Karoline stepped inside and closed the door behind her. The room felt warm. Still. Safe in a strange way. Jasmine stood, not out of formality, but out of respect. Karoline swallowed hard. Her voice cracked the moment she tried to speak. "I'm not here for cameras," she said. "I'm not here for headlines." Jasmine waited. "I'm here because I was wrong." The sentence came out like a confession she had been holding for years. "I said something cruel," Karoline continued. "Something small to me. But big to everyone else. And I know it." She looked down at her hands. "I didn't know the microphone was on," she said, "but that doesn't matter. What matters is that I said it." Jasmine nodded slowly. Her voice was calm, almost gentle. "You did," she said. "And it hurt people." Karoline's eyes watered. "I know." There was a long, heavy silence between them. Not uncomfortable. Not angry. Just real. Karoline finally looked up. "I don't expect forgiveness," she said. "I don't expect you to make excuses for me. I just needed to look you in the eye and say that I was wrong." Jasmine set her hands lightly on the edge of her desk. "Do you know why it mattered?" she asked. Karoline hesitated. Then shook her head. "Because words like that carry history," Jasmine said. "They carry weight. They carry old wounds that never fully healed." Karoline exhaled shakily. "I'm learning," she whispered. Jasmine studied her for a long moment. Then she said something no one expected. "You came here," she said softly. "And that matters." Karoline covered her mouth as a tear slid down her cheek. "I'm trying," she whispered. "I can see that," Jasmine replied. "A different kind of strength." They sat down, two women from two different worlds, two different beliefs, two different experiences, sharing one honest moment. Jasmine folded her hands on the desk. "I'm not angry with you," she said. "I'm disappointed. But I'm not angry." Karoline wiped her eyes. "Why?" she asked. "Because anger burns fast," Jasmine said. "But growth takes patience." Karoline let that settle inside her. "I don't want this moment to define me," she whispered. "It won't," Jasmine said. "But how you move forward will." Another silence settled between them. This one softer. Lighter. Karoline nodded. "I want to do better." "Then start there," Jasmine said. "With honesty. With listening. With showing up." Karoline took a deep breath. "Thank you," she whispered. "For not yelling. For not tearing me apart." Jasmine shook her head. "Yelling doesn't change minds," she said. "Honesty does." The handshake. Karoline slowly extended her hand across the desk. Her fingers trembled. Jasmine looked at the hand for a moment. Then reached out and shook it. Not out of politeness. Not out of pressure. But out of a belief that people can grow if they choose to. Their handshake was quiet. Simple. Human. The country reacts in ways no one expected. News spread fast, faster than either woman had planned. A staffer leaked that the two met privately. People began asking questions. Did Karoline apologize? Did Jasmine forgive her? What will happen next? But no one knew the full truth. Not yet. The public only saw pieces. Whispers. Hints. Rumors. The press wanted drama. They wanted fire. They wanted the story of two women at war. But the real story was different. It was about two people choosing to talk instead of tear each other down. And because of that, the story touched people in ways politics rarely does. Across the country. A teacher in Michigan told her class. This is what conflict can look like when people choose respect. A pastor in Georgia shared the clip of Jasmine's speech with his congregation and said, "Strength without cruelty is still strength." A nurse in Utah showed the handshake to her co-workers and said, "We need more leaders like this." In a small diner in Jacksonville, an older man whispered, "This is what healing looks like." It wasn't loud. It wasn't flashy. It wasn't perfect. It was human. A follow-up hearing. 2 weeks later, another hearing was scheduled. The same subcommittee. The same room. The same long tables. People whispered as they entered. Reporters watched the door. Everyone waited to see the moment Jasmine and Karoline would be in the same room again. When Karoline entered, she kept her head high but humble. Not proud. Not ashamed. Just present. When Jasmine entered, she walked with the same calm confidence as before. And something happened that no one expected. Karoline stood in front of the entire room and said, "I want to speak before we begin." Silence filled the chamber. She continued, "I made a mistake. A serious one. And I'm not going to hide from it. I'm not going to blame the mic, or the noise, or anything else. I said something hurtful. I was wrong. People stared. And I want to thank Representative Crockett," she said. "Not for forgiving me, she doesn't owe me that, but for showing grace when I gave none." Jasmine watched quietly. Her face calm. But her eyes soft. Karoline continued, "I'm here to work. To learn. To do better. And I hope you will see that in my actions, not my excuses." The room stayed silent. Not angry. Not impressed. Just thoughtful. The chair cleared his throat. "Thank you," he said. "Let's begin." The true ending of this story. Weeks passed. Then months. Life moved on. Politics moved on. New stories filled the headlines. But something from that moment stayed with people. Not the insult. Not the scandal. Not the viral clip. What stayed was the choice. The choice Jasmine made. The choice Karoline made. The choice to face truth instead of yelling. The choice to listen instead of defend. The choice to grow instead of hide. Some people called it strength. Some called it grace. Some called it maturity. But many people called it something else. Hope. And maybe that's the real story. Not anger. Not blame. Not outrage. But hope that people can change. Hope that conversations matter. Hope that dignity still has a place. Hope that quiet power still works. And maybe, even in a divided world, some moments can bring us back together. If this story touched you, if it made you think, if it made you feel something, take a moment right now. Stories like this remind us who we are and who we want to be. Give this video a like to help it reach more people. Hit the subscribe button so you never miss the next story. Drop a comment and tell us what part of this story stayed with you. Your support helps us bring more real, honest, human stories to you. Thank you for watching. We're just getting started.